everyone. Welcome to Legal Talks with Mohit Suri. The topic for today's discussion is real estate acquisition in UAE and India by foreigners, a topic which I'm sure everybody would be very interested in. I'll quickly give the introduction of Mr. Mohit Suri and Jouslin ma'am. Mr. Mohit Suri is the managing partner, Mlegal, an international lawyer with an experience of over 20 years. He has worked on various matters with top law firms like Latham & Watkins, Greenberg, Torrig, Eversheds, and consulting firms like Deloitte and E&Y. His key areas are mergers and acquisitions, international mobility, and taxation. He is a member of the Bar Council of Delhi and a member of the Supreme Court Bar Association and has been a union government counsel in the Supreme Court of India since 2014. He has held many powerful positions like being the Vice President of India's Premier Roshnara Club and was also the President of Indian Powerlifting Federation. A gold medalist at the Commonwealth Powerlifting in 2017, he has been featured in the media often for his achievements in the field of law and sports. Welcome, Mohit.
Thank you, Jeannie.
The next panelist for the day is Jouslin Khairallah, ma'am. She is the founder and managing director, Khairallah Advocates and Legal Consultants. A profound litigator, advocate, and advisor, she represents large Middle East and multinational corporate entities and individuals in representing them in complex and high-value corporate, commercial, and other cases. She is licensed to appear before all courts in the UAE, including the Federal Supreme Court, Dubai International Financial Center, and Dubai International Arbitration Center. An active member of the International Chamber of Commerce, UAE, National Committee for ICC, Emirates Human Rights Association, and many international organizations, she has left an unforgettable impression as an established face of the Arab woman entrepreneur in the region. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Jenny.
So the topic for today is real estate acquisition in UAE and India by foreigners. So my first question is for you, Mr. Mohit. Can foreigners, in this case, it can be related to residents of UAE. Can people from UAE acquire all kinds of properties in India? And if not, what are the sectors that are open to foreign investors?
Okay. See, Indian real estate sector is still not open to any foreigners. The only foreigners who can buy property into India are people of Indian origin or NRIs or people who have Indian ancestry. So this is something which is very important because the real estate industry in India has not been commercialized to a stage where it has been globally now. So, so the government has not really opened up the sector to the foreigners. But yes, FDI is open in real estate sector, which is growing at a very rapid pace. And recently, 2020, government had decided to actually allow FDI in completed projects, and at the same time also allow foreigners to through forming a company to buy projects here, or even smaller projects. So that is still in process. But on the wider side, I don't think India's real estate sector has been opened up to foreigners or foreign investment.
Which is quite surprising, actually, looking at the vast, big country that we have and the kind of construction which is going on. I would like to ask the same question to Jouslin, ma'am. Ma'am, can Indians acquire all kinds of properties in UAE and all foreigners acquire all kinds of properties in UAE? And if not, what are the sectors that are open to the foreign investors?
Actually, we have in UAE two parts. The mainland, which is not under the free zone procedure. And when we say mainland, it means this will allowing to be owned only by local. And we have the free zones. And if you comparing the free zones with the mainland, you will find out the free zone is the bigger area and the mainland is a small area. Any foreigner, Indian or from other nationality, have the full right to own 100% his property on the, of course, on the free zone. What we say on our system, the freehold. This will be 100% owned by owners. But on the area which is only for locals, we have different act. We can take it in favor of our client.
Okay, that's very interesting, actually. And my next question is related to this only. Does one need a lawyer to assist him or her with investment in real estate, Mr. Mohit?
See, you can actually do an investment even without a lawyer. Rather, you can do half the things. You can even appear in court without a lawyer. But yes, I would advise that if you are going for a big deal, it's always better to get your documents and other rights vetted by a good lawyer, because real estate is something which usually involves a sizable amount of person's earnings or capital. So you should not risk it merely on the basis of an agent or any promises by a real estate builder, because we've seen both in India and UAE, a lot of real estate agents started their projects and they just vanished and people lost a huge part of their capital. So it's always better, despite RERA and other laws there to protect the buyers or the investors, a lawyer's counsel cannot be underestimated and is very, very important. It's better to shell out some money right now rather than regret and lose your whole capital later. Thank you.
Right. Ma'am, what is your opinion on the same question? Do we need a lawyer to assist him or her with investment in real estate?
The situation in UAE is a little bit different than India, because we open for foreigner and we open for different nationality to invest in the property. So I advise anyone he would like to invest in UAE to have a lawyer beside him, because the regulation also, since we established RERA in 2007 until today, we have so many regulations. And the sale purchase agreement for the property, specifically with the developer, it need to be looking carefully from the law firm to make sure that the developer register, there is escrow account open, the terms of condition of this agreement was as per UAE law, and everything, it will be in favor of the investor, because if he will sign this agreement in the future, if there is any dispute, he will be really in bad position if he will not make sure with his lawyer all the term will be applied in his favor. I don't think in our jurisdiction, especially because we have two courts as well. We have the Dubai court and the IFC court with different actually principle and different applicable law. So we need to make sure our client, when he go through all those terms and conditions, he is agree and accept all the term and condition with full understanding.
Okay, I think that's very interesting. As a lawyer, would you like to comment on this, Mr. Mohit?
She's very right, because especially if foreigners go into any country, whether it is UAE or any other country, I think a lawyer's counsel becomes even more important, because you don't know the rules of the land, and
Correct.
small, what should I say, small things which are skipped can prove very, very expensive.
And we need also to understand, especially in UAE, the different procedure and different also background and culture from the foreigner will make him conflict with our legal system. So if they came with, let's say, the Indian background or another country, they will not understand what the way of termination of their contract, or they will not understand why a specific term like mediation will be applied in their cases. So practically, I want through this talk show to encourage every person he would like to invest in UAE to consult with lawyer, not with a business consultant, not with a business investor consultant. He need to go with a lawyer, because we go through litigation, I think Mr. Mohit as well. And when we go through litigation, we know how much the complication after signing the agreement it will be. It's not easy at all.
Yes, I agree.
Right. Right, well said. My next question is to you, Mr. Mohit. With implementation of RERA, what are the rights of investors and how long does it take to enforce the rights looking at the current situation in India?
See, RERA has been implemented in India. All the states have the right to implement their own RERA. Like Delhi would have a Delhi RERA, Haryana would have a Haryana RERA. Similarly, Maharashtra would have a Maharashtra RERA. So it's not one act which has been applied to all states. So there are minor differences between, say, Delhi RERA and UP RERA, or even Delhi RERA and Haryana RERA, which are bordering areas. When it comes to real estate, people consider NCR to be very uniform, but it is not like that. The main reason for implementing RERA was to cut down the litigation time and to protect the buyers. But unfortunately, with the COVID coming in, the times have gone out of the window because even the tribunals were closed for a very long time. The appellate tribunal has a 60-day period to give a decision. The RERA tribunal has about 6 months to give the decision. But what happens is, despite taking the decision from RERA appellate tribunal, the builder can go to the High Court, which can prolong the litigation. So this is something which I think will have to be looked into, because the main purpose for which RERA has been implemented, not just in India, but around the world, is to protect the buyers, to protect their capital, to protect their savings, because the builders are normally, because of their bigger size, because of the corporate structure, in a better position to negotiate with the buyers, or to even suppress the complaints of the investors. So what I feel is that though it has gone a long way, but still we can do a lot more to cut down the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ma'am, again, RERA has been implemented in Dubai also. So what are the rights of investors and how long does it take to enforce the rights because of RERA?
You know, the RERA and UAE maybe have different rules than India, because the government established RERA, especially in Dubai. You need to also just make the difference between Dubai and other Emirates, because other Emirates, they have also different land department. And our Dubai Emirates, when they establish RERA, they establish it only to put the rules and regulation for the developer and for the investor. So they only have the right to put the rules and regulation and make sure the investor and the developer, they follow those rules. But from the issue of litigation, anyone, whether the developer or even the investor, they still have the right to go through litigation, whether this litigation, it will take long or short terms. But as per actually the law, the property law. So practically, I can see the maybe RERA, it's only been successful to put the rules and regulation, but litigation side still open, whether it will be not in favor of the investor or not in favor of the developer. The only, maybe the only part of having the full authority to RERA on the associating management, because the associate management, it will be apply all their legal notices and execution through the unit through RERA. But if there is any dispute between developer and investor, it should be referred to the court. And in my opinion, this is the correct place to solve the dispute.
Right, indeed. Mr. Mohit, my next question to you is that what are the options for people who are stuck with unfinished project from developers?
See, as Jouslin ma'am has been actually telling you, the litigation or the courts are the best options. Basically, what happens is, before 2016, most of the states did not even have RERA. So if your projects are from that era, what would happen is that you would have to just approach the civil courts, whether at the level, the litigation with developers is very interesting and can be very complex in India. Because one, the developer could have gone insolvent, so you have to go to the NCLT for the insolvency. He could have not finished his project and cheated people, so you have to register a criminal case with the police. You might have a civil dispute because he's not fulfilled his promises as per what he was promising. So for that, you'll have to go to a civil court. Then, if the project is covered by the RERA, you'll have to go to the RERA court. But yes, what I have seen of late, even the consumer forum is there. What I have seen of late, that the decisions are being done faster. And most of the builders, despite their sizable financial muscle, are being brought to the book. Recently, a leading developer was asked to pull down 2 of his towers, which he had brought up in the common complex of a project. The same developer was actually the consumer forum issued issued his arrest warrants because he did not comply by the orders. So these are things which have never happened before. So I think even in India, despite the disputes on the rise because people are facing bigger projects and bigger builders, things are happening and they are more favorable to the buyers, which was never like that before. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. And ma'am, does anything similar, like what would be your answer to this? That what are the options for people who are stuck with unfinished projects and developers? Do people face a similar problem in Dubai also, in UAE also?
You know, the RERA in this situation, they will issue a letter to the developer for stopping any development, and they will immediately transfer the full project to liquidation. And from the liquidation stage, also the new regulation in Dubai, they establish a specific committee. This committee have different chamber, and in the chamber they will start do the full liquidation of the project. But the law has been changed recently, and during these changes they will allow the developer to give the full auditing report of the project. And if he will provide the auditing report and RERA find another investor, they will allow him to replace the project under the old developer with a new one, and they can continue again. The process in the liquidation committee recently was to make sure any project will be continue developing. Why? Because undeveloping project, it will be hurt the economy badly. And if we find investor, he can take the project as it is, and he's willing to complete the full project. It will be benefit to the country as well for the economy. So practically, I think our system, they're trying always to find solution, and this solution is supposed to be for the both party, whether developer or even investor.
Okay. All right. Right. That I think that's an interesting thing, and that's gives quite an assurance to the people, to the investors who have who have stuck their money in unfinished projects. Okay. Is there any residence right that comes for investment in property in UAE?
Yes, in UAE, we start actually with the 99 years visa. It was maybe since 2009, 2010, and then we develop now different kind of visa, like the investor visa, who can invest 2 million and above in UAE, or he can have a company with a 2 million, so he will have also getting the visa. And recently the new law, it came especially in Dubai. Actually specify Dubai because RERA as a regulation of the land department is specified for Dubai only. So recently, they're allowing anyone who's owned property with the amount 710,000, they allow him to have 3 years visa. So we can see there is different kind of visa, whether this is will be the federal and the federal in the federal law, or specifically under RERA Dubai law. I think it's very interesting what Dubai they made, because they want to make sure investor who will spend money not only looking for what the income of this investment, but also he looking for staying and live in UAE, which is I think it's very good for the economy.
Yes, indeed it is. And I think that is the reason lots of people from India and from so many other countries look forward to investment in Dubai. And maybe that'll be my next question, whether they're interested in commercial or in residential. Okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Mohit, is there any residence right that comes from the investment in property when they want to invest?
That's not applicable to India, because we're not allowing any foreigners other than people of Indian origin or Indian descent to invest in India.
Yeah, we are quite a few.
The second thing is that all these people who are NRIs or who are of Indian descent, they have something called an OCI, which gives them almost a parallel citizenship other than the voting right. So they are allowed to do to own the property. They're allowed to do business. You know, there are a lot of reasons why the Indian government has not opened up the real estate sector. This is basically, it was not a legal prerogative, so I did not answer this earlier. But you know, in India, the real estate is already very hyped. It's already on the higher side and out of reach of most people. Then, if you allow the foreigners, it would spike up further. So the government wants it to be more affordable, does not want it to spike up further. And this is the reason why we are not allowing foreigners to buy. But yes, what will happen is that sooner or later, you would see that the Indian government would allow FDI into even finished projects, which was discussed in 2020. And very soon you would see that things would look up.
That's good. I would request Galaxy A70s to please mute themselves. Thank you. Yes, Mohit, you may continue.
Yeah, it's all done. Thank you. Let's.
Okay, all right. So Mohit, you have been very actively working in India as well as in UAE. I wanted to ask you that what generally the queries of the people or your clients, what interests them more, commercial investments or residential investments, if they are looking specifically at UAE?
See, that is not our prerogative anyways. It's for the client to decide whether he wants to go for a residential or a commercial.
No, I generally wanted to know. I was asking you like
normally most Indians are wanting to buy their second homes in UAE normally, and additionally, if they are wanting to trade, most of their business outlets are on the mainland, say probably the Gold Stoop and others, where they cannot own the places, as Jouslin had told you. So they mainly rented there and own their houses there. That's been the trend of investment.
Okay. And ma'am, would you like to add a little to it, since you are there in UAE? What kind of clientele interests is inclined more towards commercial or towards residential?
You know, in UAE, we have the inquiry from both client. A client, they're interested on establishing their business in UAE as well. They also prefer to have their own houses in Dubai. And I believe from the revenue of the income for property in UAE, the revenue of the property is quite high, around 7%. It's true before in 2000, maybe we can say in 2010 and 2011, it was higher to 10 to 11%. But also comparing with other countries, the revenue 7% is quite good. And we expect also, we expected during the expo, we expect to have more investor, and we expect those investors to looking to make their target also the property. And I believe there is always reason in UAE when the people they choose the property. Sometimes not only the revenue, but sometimes they choose the property because the facility in UAE, it will allow him with the regulation, with the full system, it allow him to manage their property very well, which is, I'm not sure how it's in India, but I know those facilities not available outside of UAE. Did you agree with me, Mr. Mohit?
It's mixed match because now things are changing around the world, and the management is becoming better. Of course, in India, we've not opened up to to foreigners, so we cannot comment on that. But yes, NRIs and Indian descent people who are buying properties in India, at least with good projects, are relatively in a good space. But yes, UAE, I would rate it as one of the most developed property markets around the world after the United States. Like there, construction is an industry. It's not just investment. It's an industry. You see new towns, new cities, new sub-towns coming up every 2 years or 3 years. You'll see Dubai change completely. So we should actually thank Ms. Madam Jouslin for bringing so much of education to us and educating all our participants with this. So would you like to say something, Jeannie?
Yes, I'm more than happy to always be in this talk show.
Sure.
And we actually expect also to have more people to ask a question because they need to get this benefit.
Yeah, sure. I think after this, what we do is we also put our put the show on our YouTube and other channels. So probably people who cannot come and participate during the talk show can always see it later on our social media channels. And we are really getting a lot of queries about UAE and the Middle East ever since we started doing this show. And I think that there is a bright future even for the show and for the trade between India and UAE. And I think a lot of people will look forward to investing in UAE after listening to your great advice. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohit. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thank both of you to have such an excellent discussion and knowledge exchange. I'm sure the viewers would really enjoy and look forward to it. And as Mr. Mohit has already mentioned, the recording of the same would be available on our YouTube and other social channels. Keep following us for all such wonderful programs where we'll be talking about lots of issues that will really concern. So we'll see you next week, same time. And the topic is intellectual property rights in UAE and India. And you can follow us on our social channels. And I thank both the panelists again for joining us, and thank you everyone who joined us.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mr. Mohit. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Jouslin. Have a nice day, please. Thank you.
Thank you.